Coheed and Cambria and Taking Back Sunday announce a summer co-headlining tour across North America. The house where AC/DC was formed was accidentally destroyed and is a newly leaked Oasis reunion set list the real deal. Let's break it all down on this edition of the Rock News Roundup Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rock News Roundup Podcast here on the Nick Chino Music YouTube channel. I'm your host, Nick Chino. Mic's on, devil horns up. This is the latest in rock music news, reviews, and discussion. Your source for rock music news. If you like this show on YouTube, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you're listening to an audio version of this podcast, you can find that across streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're on there, we'd appreciate a rating and review, and you can follow me across social media, across platforms at Nick Chino Music. And if you're so inclined, right now up on the YouTube channel, my latest video is a rock album review of the new album from Franz Ferdinand. It's called The Human Fear. It's a pretty good record. It's got some of the standard kind of Franz Ferdinand sounds that you would expect, mixed with some experimental elements, maybe some elements of the Beatles and the Beach Boys. Some really cool experimental different things for Franz Ferdinand going on there. So if you're so inclined, you can head over to the YouTube channel right now and check out my rock album review for the new album for Franz Ferdinand called The Human Fear. But let's get to this week's topics on the Rock News Roundup Podcast. Some big headlines right now in the world of rock music news. I call them headliners here on the podcast. So let's get to the latest headliner here on the show, and that is the leaked Oasis set list. If you're an Oasis fan, you might have seen floating around online a leaked Oasis set list, a rumored set list that has been making the rounds on all the Oasis social accounts or the fan accounts and that kind of thing. You may have seen it. Some may have seen it out there. And just like everything else with Oasis right now, this is just a rumor. There's so much that we don't know about this Oasis reunion other than the tickets cost us all a boatload of money to get, and some people didn't even get tickets. We know that the shows are coming up later this year, but everything beyond that is just pure speculation. So with this rumored set list circulating online, a fan went and asked Liam on X, because Liam Gallagher is very active on X. He's actually hilarious on there. If you don't follow Liam Gallagher, he's worth a follow, even if you're not an Oasis fan, because he's just so hilarious to follow on there. But he said, this is what he said, quote unquote, "It's not far off in terms of the accuracy of this rumored Oasis set list." And really, when you look at it, I'll pop it up on the screen here. This is not really surprising at all. It features pretty much everything you would expect from an Oasis reunion set list, at least everything I would expect as a big Oasis fan. It features a lot of the biggest and best Oasis songs, as really any decent set list should, right? You want to really to have that nice spread of the entire Oasis discography. It's got 21 songs on it, which I think is pretty reasonable from what I understand. I think that's pretty much the length of it. Every time I ever saw Oasis back in the day, I saw them 6 times live when they were still together. I think that's pretty accurate with the length of the set list. But the thing is with this set list is that any fan out there can pretty much put this together and put it out as a rumored set list. It doesn't really make much of an effort, or they don't have to make much of an effort to do this. Like I actually, in 2024, I think maybe just after the reunion was announced, so I want to say in September, October, you can check it on the YouTube channel, but I did my own Oasis speculation video where I kind of did this kitchen sink set list where I pretty much threw everything in there that I wanted to see in my ideal Oasis reunion set list. And then looking at this, my own list wasn't far off from that. So maybe instead of making a video about it, I should have just posted a fake set list and said, this is the rumored reunion set list. And then everybody would have been all over it. But like I said, looking at this list, let me pop it up here for you. It is a nice little spread of the entire Oasis discography. Now, some fans think that really Oasis should stick to just maybe the first 2 or 3 records, stick to Definitely Maybe, stick to Morning Glory, stick to Be Here Now, although I don't think they'll play very much of Be Here Now at all, but a lot of Definitely Maybe and a lot of Morning Glory, but that really wouldn't make up a set list that every Oasis fan, whether they be casual or diehard, would enjoy. I think we expect more from this Oasis reunion set list. I think it was, if I was looking at this, I would think it was fake if it was full of like B-sides. If it was really full of of just things that we know that Oasis wouldn't play, whether that, being like Noel's going to play Idler's Dream solo on the piano, which would be amazing, but I don't think that's going to happen. Or they're going to play the first ever live version of I Got the Fever from the Stand By Me single, which is my favorite Oasis B-side. Would I like to see that happen? Yes, but I don't think that will happen. That would just be crazy talk. So if this set list had maybe more of those kind of pie in the sky song choices, I would probably think it's even more fake than this one. But taking a look at this, there are some good choices on here, right? Starting out with Acquiesce, I don't know. Sometimes I think that's maybe a little bit of a fan wishing, because we want the show to start with Liam and Noel singing Acquiesce together, with Liam singing that verse, Noel singing that chorus, because we need each other. I feel like that would be a little bit on the nose. I'm not sure if Oasis would really go for that, but we'll see. If this is like in order, it looks like it's in some sort of order. Some might say it makes sense. Lila, would love to hear that. Shaker Maker, I feel like that's going to be in there. I feel like there will be an emphasis on definitely maybe in Morning Glory, because those really are the ones that everybody, even the most casual Oasis fans, people who are just there to hear the songs that they know, those are the songs that are really going to appeal to them. Hindu Times, great to hear something from Heathen Chemistry. Other things on here, Stop Crying Your Heart Out, The Importance of Being Idle. So we have Lila in there too, some representation of Don't Believe the Truth. Don't see anything in here from Dig Out Your Soul, which is okay. And then there are some really, really glaring omissions from this set list, which I don't know if Oasis could get away with. They were going to do the reunion shows. And one of those, of course, is Wonderwall, is not on this rumored set list. I guess maybe the Gallagher brothers would feel like that was too on the nose. But really, when you're playing these reunion shows to stadiums full of thousands of people, do you really want to skip Wonderwall? I feel like that's just going to be really disappointing for a lot of fans. Also, I don't see the master plan on here. And if you're going to play Half the World Away, if you're going to play The Importance of Being Idle, you can definitely play the master plan. I think Oasis even played it the last time, or maybe last two times that I saw them in Toronto. And then another really glaring omission for me on this list was Go Let It Out. There's no representation of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants on here on this list. I don't think they have to go deep into Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, but I would like to see some sort of representation of that album on this set list. So I'd like to see Go Let It Out in there. And then I do think that the band will be kicking off the show with the taped version, like the studio version that they've always played at the beginning of their show, of Fucking in the Bushes, which is also from Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. So other than those kind of glaring omissions, which would be Wonderwall and the master plan, and of course the inclusion of something from Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, Go Let It Out, Fucking in the Bushes would be the key ones from there. And then nothing from Dig Out Your Soul. Maybe they should play The Shock of the Lightning. I think that would be the only thing that they would play from that, because I don't really feel like that's an album that a lot of casual Oasis fans really hold in high regard. So that would only be for the diehards if they wanted to do that. Or like I said, if they want to do Idler's Dream, or they want to do I Got the Fever, they want to do Step Out, or if they want to do something, really, really random, or not really random, but just something a little bit more rare for the diehard Oasis fans, I would also be okay with that if they wanted to put that in there. But otherwise, really good set list. Columbia, Cast No Shadow, She's Electric, really? That would be a surprise for me if they included She's Electric. I feel like that's a little bit of a long shot, a little bit of a pie in the sky, but otherwise, whatever, Slide Away, Supersonic, Rock and Roll Star, this really does have everything that you would want to see in a rumored Oasis reunion set list. But really, any Oasis fan worth their salt could put together this particular set list. And I did my own video of it. I'll link it up for you guys somewhere. You can check it out on the channel. Just search it up. It's my Oasis set list speculation video, and I did that back in September, October. It's on the channel, so check it out. So that is the rumored Oasis set list. We'll see if it comes true when the band finally takes the stage later this year. And the next headliner topic on this edition of the Rock News Roundup Podcast is the house where AC/DC was formed has been accidentally destroyed. That's right. I said accidentally destroyed. Last week on the show, I mentioned that the Morrison Hotel in LA, which was the famous site of the famous Doors album cover, Morrison Hotel, burned down. This was previous to the LA wildfires. And of course, we're sending out a lot of good vibes and a lot of positive thoughts to the people that have been affected by the LA wildfires. Thinking about you here on the Rock News Roundup podcast. But last week on the show was mentioning that the Morrison Hotel burned down, which is kind of speaking to the loss of important rock and roll landmarks, and not just rock and roll landmarks, but important landmarks in general. Some are protected, some aren't. And then I guess in this case, even if they are protected, that's not going to stop a property company from destroying the house, which in this case was the site of the formation of one of the most famous rock bands of all time. This is according to exclaim.ca. An Australian property company has accidentally demolished the house where AC/DC started in Sydney, Australia. AC/DC was formed in this house, as well as the Easy Beats. Now, if you're not familiar with the Easy Beats, that was a 60s band that featured the brother of Angus and Malcolm Young, George Young. He was in a band called the Easy Beats. They had a big hit back in the 60s called Friday on My Mind, which is an absolutely classic, amazing song. So if you don't know the song The Easy Beats, or the band The Easy Beats, and the song Friday on My Mind, highly recommended that you check that out. And then, of course, there's that AC/DC connection. So these bands were formed on 4 Burleigh Street, which was in Sydney, Australia, still is, which was the home of the Young family after they moved in in 1963. I think they emigrated from England. I might be incorrect on that, but I believe they emigrated from England to Australia. And this house was recently purchased by a property company for a few $1 million, not a cheap price. And then after they purchased it, they swiftly demolished it, claiming that they didn't know the cultural and historical and musical significance of this house, which was the place, the formation of AC/DC and the Easy Beats, one of the most famous musical landmarks in all of Australia. And actually, this home where AC/DC was formed is listed on the National Trust list of historic homes. But I guess the property company was not aware of this fact, and they claims that the owner, who owned the house for a very long time, I guess after the Youngs moved out, they did not inform the property company that this was a registered home and that this was a protected house. But then actually, according to this article from Exclaim, homes that are even registered in this trust, being registered in this trust does not prevent the houses from being knocked down. So I'm wondering what the use is of something like this to be included. Yeah, you could be included in the historic homes registry, but that's not going to prevent you from knocking it down, which makes absolute no sense. But the good news in this situation, even though this house, this building has been demolished and is lost forever, the company that did this, the property company, has apologized profusely, and now they're vowing to make things right by building a special AC/DC monument using materials from the demolished home. So at least there's something happening here to make this situation right. Obviously, there were some major oversights that happened here. I feel like this is such a shame because it's another rock landmark destroyed. Like I said last week on the show, even though it was a derelict building and it wasn't really being used and really wasn't really maybe as in a current legendary state as we know it from the Morrison Hotel album cover, but losing that building as well, it's just totally just a total loss for rock music fans that they lose this building. And I'm thinking, like, why didn't the property company know about? Like, did the property company, do they hate AC/DC? Do they not like Thunderstruck? It's a great song. Who knows what's going on here? But this is absolutely a loss for the people of this rock community in Australia. Like, imagine if they tore down one of the Beatles' homes in Liverpool, like John Lennon's childhood home on Menlove Avenue in Liverpool. Like, if they tore that down, and that's a registered home, Yoko Ono bought it and donated it to the National Trust. So, like, it's a protected home. Nothing will ever happen to that home, thankfully. But if something happened, people would be up in arms. People would be majorly upset if something like that happens. So, and this is not really, when we think about it, a lot of homes eventually get knocked down. I understand, the march of progress. Like I mentioned in the last episode, the march of progress continues. I understand sometimes these things need to happen for things to progress and for new buildings and new structures to be built. But a lot of famous homes end up getting replaced by monuments. Like, for example, the Beach Boys house in Hawthorne, California, the home where they were raised, the Wilson brothers, the home where they grew up in Hawthorne, California, that was knocked down in the 1980s to make a freeway. And that wouldn't be the only house that was knocked down to make a freeway. Just in this instance, it was the Beach Boys' house. It was the house where Brian and Carl and Dennis Wilson grew up, and really is one of those formative sites where some of the most famous rock and roll musicians and music was made. So as time goes on, we're going to continue to see these rock and roll landmarks and just landmarks in general kind of maybe fade into history, which is really a shame. And it's just like, even if they're protected in this situation, this AC/DC house was registered as a historical landmark. That did not stop them from knocking it down. And really, somebody should have said something to this property company that this was a house of significance. There were so many oversights. I'm going to get into politics here. So many oversights from the owner of the house, the municipality, the property owner. I demand answers. I was thinking, after reading this story, I was so up in arms that I was like, should I study property law to prevent rock and roll landmarks from being demolished? Is that my calling in life? Probably not. But if I had the money, then I would go around the world and protect all these landmarks from being destroyed, but I don't. Unfortunately, I can't stop these property developers from destroying the home where AC/DC was formed, where the Easy Beats were formed, and where these historical things were happened, where music was made that changed the world. That is not under my purview. That is above my pay grade. But hopefully we will not see any more rock and roll landmarks or really important places of note in general destroyed by property developers accidentally. So we'll see what happens. And the final headliner topic for this episode of the Rock News Roundup podcast is that Coheed and Cambria and Taking Back Sunday have announced a co-headlining North American tour that's going to kick off this August. Coheed is really filling up their schedule for 2025. It's going to be a big year for them because they're releasing their new album, Vaxis. I don't just say Vaxis. I say Vaxis, the father of Make Believe. That's coming out on March the 14th. So they just announced this co-headlining tour with Taking Back Sunday across North America. This is going to be happening this summer. It's going to come with support from a band called Foxing, which is not a band that I'm super familiar with, but they're based out of St. Louis, Missouri. The pre-sale for this tour is going to happen for fans this Wednesday, January the 15th, and then the general on sale for everybody is going to be happening this Friday, January the 17th. And the very extensive list of shows is going to start August the 16th in the home of their opening band, Foxing, in St. Louis, Missouri, and then it's going to continue through till September the 21st in Seattle. If you're a Canadian fan like me, if you live in Southern Ontario, the tour date that's going to be of note for you, the one's going to be a note for me as well, would be August the 24th. That's going to be happening in Toronto at the Budweiser Stage, which is a good venue. I've seen many shows at the Budweiser Stage, formerly the Molson Amphitheater in Toronto, and that's going to be with Taking Back Sunday and Foxing. And this is actually on top of a very busy schedule for Coheed because they are going on tour with Periphery coming up in the spring, and that's going to be kicking off in May. And then after their tour with Taking Back Sunday in the summer, they're going to be going on their SS Neverender cruise in November, which is the signature Coheed and Cambria cruise, which is cool. They're going to be keeping themselves very busy, and of course, in addition to the tours, a lot going on musically. They released this thing called Claudio Covers at the end of 2024, which was acoustic covers that Claudio Sanchez did from Coheed and Cambria. It's like Smashing Pumpkins. They did a little version of Stumbleine from Melancholy and Infinite Sadness. Very cool cover. Like, not a lot of people are going to cover Stumbleine, but that's a great Smashing Pumpkins song. And then the Coheed, the Claudio cover of that is very cool. There's a really cool cover of Your Love by The Outfield, if you're familiar with that 80s track. Great little cover of that. There's a cover of Taylor Swift, Welcome to New York. Really cool little collection of songs. And then what we've heard so far from this new record, Vaxis, the father of Make Believe, what we've heard so far from this new record has been really solid. I've really enjoyed what I've heard so far, which is the first couple of singles. Searching for Tomorrow, really solid Coheed single. Rocks a Lot, Blindside Sunny, which is a little bit more loose. It doesn't feel quite as like that epic anthemic Coheed. It's a little little bit more metal on that track. Really solid singles. And then the band just released a third single from this new album, Vaxxus 3, The Father of Make Believe, Someone Who Can, which I listened to right before I started recording this podcast. Really cool track. It's upbeat, it's melodic, more on the poppy side of Coheed, and that's really the cool thing about them, is that they are a really great heavy hard rock guitar band, metal guitar band, but they do have a really melodic and poppy side, and this one almost has a little bit of like a Bruce Springsteen vibe to it. I found it to be really, really enjoyable, so I think this new album from Coheed is one of the more anticipated albums of 2025. I did my top most anticipated albums of 2025 video. They were on that. We don't have a ton going on so far for the year, but there are some key releases also kind of Coheed related, as I mentioned on last week's show. LS Dunes, which is a super group featuring Travis of Coheed and some other people as well. Anthony Green is in there as well as members of like Taking Back Sunday and Thursday. Their record is going to be coming out very soon. Not quite as into that as I am with Coheed. Really excited for the new record, and then I don't know, might have to pick up tickets to go see them in Toronto with Taking Back Sunday. That's like the perfect like mid 2000s emo rock lineup. If you grew up in the mid 2000s, if you were like, I think it was 2003, 2004, I was in college, so totally right in the target audience for bands like Coheed, bands like Taking Back Sunday. So might have to go pick up tickets for that. But really, like, such an extensive list of shows for Coheed for 2025, with that tour with Mastodon and Periphery kicking off in Salem, Virginia on May the 10th, and that really just continues right through. They're doing some festivals, and then that St. Louis, Missouri show kicking off their tour with Taking Back Sunday. So new music from Coheed, lots of live shows coming up. If you're a Coheed and Cambria fan, you should be in your glory in 2025. As I said, tickets for this tour with Taking Back Sunday go on sale for general audiences, for the general on sale this Friday, January the 17th. All right, so before we wrap up this episode of the Rock News Roundup podcast, I want to talk about my tracks of the week. Every week here on the show, I'm going to recommend you a couple of different rock tracks that I'm really digging this week. And this week I have a couple of newer songs and one song that's a little bit older, from back in 2007. But the first track of the week that I have for you this week is by a band called Hairpin. It's a song called Cyclone. This is a really, really cool track. These guys are a 4-piece band based out of New York City, and like so many great bands, and like so many people these days, this was recommended to me on Spotify. It immediately made me perk up my ears. I immediately latched onto this song called Cyclone. It's really cool. It's got this mesmerizing drum and bass line, just locking in the groove. It's got these understated but really catchy melodic vocals and some really tasty guitar stuff happening in there as well. And on their website, it says they're focused on distinct grooves, rhythmic vocal stylings, angular guitars, pop choruses, and epic arcs. And I would say that's pretty accurate with the sound of this song called Cyclone. And they actually have a few different songs. They don't have a full album on Spotify yet, but they have a couple of different songs on there, including a most recent song called Oh Dear, which is also really solid. So I can't wait to hear more from these guys. This song is a keeper. So my first track of the week is Cyclone by Hairpin. My second track of the week comes courtesy of Franz Ferdinand. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I just did a rock album review on the YouTube channel for the new album from Franz Ferdinand called The Human Fear. It's a really, really solid album. It's got lots of those typical indie rock, spiky guitars and bubbly bass and synthy Franz Ferdinand songs, but then a couple of different songs which go in a little bit more of an experimental direction for Franz Ferdinand. And one of the songs that I really enjoyed on this new record, The Human Fear, is called Tell Me I Should Stay. And this was really, really cool. It starts out with this big piano intro that sounds really cool, and it goes into the band kind of doing their thing. And then into the chorus, it just transitioned to this big Beach Boys-esque chorus. It's got these timpanis, lots of Beach Boys kind of style production on there. Very Pet Sounds, very Beach Boys. A very awesome song. I enjoyed the Franz Ferdinand album, but I found myself kind of getting bored. And then when this song came on, I was kind of almost jumped out of my seat with excitement of how cool this song was. It's called Tell Me I Should Stay. Very different from Franz Ferdinand, at least from what I know of the band. Very different from Franz Ferdinand. So I really did enjoy that new song, Tell Me I Should Stay. from Franz Ferdinand. And then my final track of the week for this week's edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast is from Coheed and Cambria. We were just talking about them, talking about their North American tour, and talking about their new album Vaxis 3. But for Coheed, for this week, one of the tracks of the week that I'm going to recommend is by Coheed, and a song called Feathers. This one is going back to their album from 2007. You gotta love these Coheed album titles. Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4, Volume 2, No World for Tomorrow. That's a really cool Coheed record. Feathers is one of the best tracks on that record. And one of the coolest things about this song and about the whole album is that it features Taylor Hawkins, the late great Taylor Hawkins of Foo Fighters, on drums on this song and on the entire record. I guess Josh Eppard, who was the drummer for Coheed, he was on a little bit of breakup from the band at the time. He wasn't featured on that record. So Taylor Hawkins came in and played drums on the record, came in and played drums on this song, Feathers. It's a great performance. It's a great song. Has such amazing energy. I love the guitar figures in the verses. The chorus is soaring. It's catchy. And you know what? Coheed is always melodic. They're always really well put together. The songs, the melodies are always really good, but maybe they're not always as immediate as you would want them to be. Sometimes with good Coheed songs, it takes a couple of listens to really key in to the great parts of those melodies. But the song like Feathers, this one is more immediate, and it's really a great rock and Coheed song. So if you don't know Feathers, that is one of my tracks of the week. Coheed and Cambria, Feathers. Franz Ferdinand, Tell Me I Should Stay from the new album, The Human Fear, and then a song from New York City's Hairpin and their song called Cyclone. So those are my tracks of the week, and that's going to wrap up this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. I want to thank you very much for listening, or if you're watching on YouTube. Either way, if you're watching on YouTube, really appreciate a like, a share, and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio only version on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening, please toss us a rate and review so we can let more people know about this podcast. Of course, check out the YouTube channel for lots of new videos. This weekend, I'm going to be working on a new Oasis deep dive. Don't quite know which song we're doing just yet, but that'll be coming up on Saturday, a Sunday here on the YouTube channel. Make sure to follow me across social platforms at Nick Chino Music, and I'll see you guys again next week for another edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. But until then, rock on, everybody.